Hey balancers, and welcome to another episode of the Balance Theory podcast. As mentioned in the intro, this episode is dedicated to anybody feeling any level of unhappiness with their job. Today I want to talk about and kind of pull back the layers. What we're compromising our happiness for when we're settling for jobs that we're unhappy in, what it means, why we're actually unhappy. So I want to pinpoint the actual source of that unhappiness, get you to start thinking about what would make you happy, and then talk about next steps. I mean, that's not going to necessarily mean you have to pack up the job, quit tomorrow and find something new, although for you it might, but it's going to give you a really nice framework to just start thinking about these things, to bring your awareness to it a little more. Because as I said, our work is such a huge part of our lives, of our balance. And if it's dragging us down, you probably already know and feel it, that it impacts and spills over into all the other areas of your life. So buckle up, because this one's going to be a really, really good one. Now, if this doesn't apply to you necessarily, you're still interested to listen, it might come in handy in the future. But what I will say is you probably also know someone who is pretty unhappy in a role they're in at the moment. Maybe they have been needing a push to make a change. Maybe they're feeling quite lost in what their next steps are. So please forward this on to them now, because I guarantee anyone feeling that way is going to get a lot out of this episode. It's going to really increase the self-awareness and give you some practical tools and ways to think about this stuff so that you can kind of start thinking about what next steps look like for you. Just before we dive in, I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to leave their thoughts on the survey. I'm so excited. I feel like it's all coming together the more and more responses I'm getting. So if you do want to contribute, have your say, please use the link in the show notes. It will take you about 2 to 3 minutes to fill it out, and it means the world to me. I mean, the more responses I get, the more on point this content can be. So don't be shy. It's all completely anonymous. It's just a couple of thoughts about how you like to consume the content, what you like to consume, just to give me a bit of a sense for who's on the other side with me in their ears right now. I mean, it's strange. I mean, you guys probably feel very familiar with my voice, but sometimes I feel so disconnected, like I don't know who's on the other side. So these little opportunities I get to know you and our community really help me piece together and put the glue into the podcast and the community. So thank you again to everyone, and thanks to everyone who's going to take the time to fill that out too. So let's jump into it. The bottom line, the question you need to ask yourself: when you are unhappy at work, generally you are there for a reason, and you're there for a reason that is strong enough that you're compromising your happiness for. So essentially your happiness is being compromised. And I want you to think about why that is. Is it because of what you perceive to be potential career trajectory? Is it for the money? Is it because you don't know what else you would do? We need to start thinking about what is the thing that we are actually placing over and above our happiness. Because if you know you've been feeling this way for a while, there is still something that is stronger or big enough, or something that you're prioritizing above your happiness that's keeping you there, that's keeping you from taking action to make a change. So I want you to drill down what that is. Is it money? Is it, opportunity? Is it, like I said, you maybe just don't know what else to do? What is it that is ranking higher than your happiness, or that's hooking you in to keep you there for longer than maybe what you know you want to be, or for a period that you think, it's kind of done and dusted, I should move on now? Identifying this is really, really important. It gives us a starting place to understand our happiness in the context of potential other needs we've got. So if we have a need that's financial, or if we have a need or a want to grow in our career, sometimes we put that goal or that need over and above our immediate happiness. It's kind of like this concept that you'll enjoy later and suffer now, right? So it's important to contextualize what we're compromising on right now in terms of for our long-term gain or for something that we're chasing. So I want you to kind of try and piece that together. What is your happiness being compromised for? It's very, very important to put it all in perspective. So that's the first step I want you to think about. The second idea is really just looking to what is making you unhappy. So let's say in the first step, you thought, I'm doing this because of the money, because it's really good financial gains at the moment, and I'm happy to do it just for a couple of years, and I'm happy to just suck up everything else that comes with it. So now we need to go with and deep dive into what that everything else that comes with it is or looks like. Is it a toxic workplace? Is it an unbearable boss? Is it really demanding hours? Is it unrealistic expectations? Is it heaps of overtime? Is it poor work-life balance? Maybe you don't have that much autonomy or that you're bored. I want you to really try and identify what is it about this role that is making you unhappy. And this is really important because sometimes it's not that the whole role is something you want to get rid of or something you want to quit and just walk away with. Sometimes you actually really like where you work, or you really like the people you work for, or you really like the role you're in, but there's just that one aspect that kind of makes it suck. So this is what we want to pinpoint our finger on, because this will indicate to us the gravity of change, or I guess the direction in which we need to go next. So now you're kind of left with two things. You've got at the top your why, the thing that is trumping your happiness right now. It's kind of your driver, your motivator. Let's just say that's money for argument's sake for now. The financial gain is at the top, right? And that's coming over and above your happiness. Now underneath it, so imagine we're like looking at a pyramid or a triangle that's at the top. Underneath it are all the things that make you unhappy about the job. Maybe it's really, really asshole boss. Maybe it is really toxic work hours, whatever it is. When you have those two things front of mind, you can literally look at it quite clearly, clear as day, and go, I am sucking up all this toxic stuff for the sake of more money. And the bottom line question is it worth it? Now, I cannot answer that question for you. You have to answer that question for yourself. Is it worth it to have all this toxicity for the 2 years, 3 years you're going to commit to earning more money? Maybe it absolutely is. Maybe if you've, cross-checked other options, there's no way you'd be earning this type of money if you were doing something else. And you're prepared to suck it up for the next 2-3 years in pursuit of the money or whatever that thing is that you are prioritizing over and above your happiness. But the biggest thing here is not only to ask, is it worth it, is also to ask you, is that what you want? Is this truly what you want? Or is this just a branch off an idea or something that you think you need to pursue? And this is really important, because I get it. Like, sometimes to get things we want, we really have to push ourselves. We have to work hard. We have to make compromises. I'm not denying any of those things. But if it's a strong enough why, if you know why you're doing that, if you have the awareness to say that I can actually accept that I'm postponing my general sense of happiness, my work culture or my work relationships, I'm compromising on those things for this greater pursuit, and you have a strong enough why, then that general level of awareness will all come together to form a really strong foundation for your why. And this isn't really a clear-cut thing where you can say, well, the job doesn't make you happy, throw it out the window. Like, I get it. Sometimes you have to work, you have responsibilities, you have obligations, or sometimes you just have big goals and you are a really hard-driven, hard-working type of person, and you just want to go after it, and you're prepared to cut some corners in other areas to make that work. But ultimately, it comes down to your appetite for all the other areas of your life, because sometimes these things that sit underneath, our happiness, the things that we're compromising on, they get to a point where they eat away at everything else. So let's just say it's a really demanding role where you're working a lot of overtime, you've got a lot of toxic people in management who are really disrespectful of your personal space and you as a human. That means you can't exercise. That means you don't get to see your friends a lot. You can start to see how that spills over into the other balance areas. At that point, you need to ask yourself again, this pursuit of money or whatever it is, career trajectory, how important is that to me versus the imminent or, right now, me having to compromise on my health and my relationships? Like, if you guys are asking me personally, there is no job under the sun that is worth it for me. There is no amount of money that's worth it for me if I need to compromise on my health. And that is a reason, anyone that's had a conversation with me, that is the straightest reason why I will never go and apply for a top tier law firm. Now, there is nothing wrong with working at those firms, but just for me and my appetite for what I like to do, how I like to conduct my life, the things I like to prioritize in the morning, it's just not something I would ever commit myself to, because it would be a disservice to myself and to the person who hires me. So that's what you need to come down to at the end of the day. If something is making you unhappy, you have two choices. You can make a change and find something that's going to tick boxes that make you actually happy and looking forward to go to work. You can change. You can look for something else. Or you can bring in a level of awareness and accept that is the current reality, that it's a current situation in pursuit of something that you are placing over and above your overall happiness. Now, do I think this is a bad situation to be in? I think that's a very subjective question. I think that this comes down to what your personal goals are. And like I said before, your appetite for the way you like to structure and manage your time. So it's not a hard, like, yes, this is bad. No, this is, there's no clear-cut answer. It really comes down to how it makes you feel. And as a whole, when you zoom out, what that means for the longevity of your life. Sometimes it's not worth being under that much stress because we don't know what that long-term stress or that short-term stress is going to do for our bodies and our healths. And ultimately, I just think, if you're compromising on those things, how good is your performance? If you do need those things to fill your cup, to make you feel energized. If you can't do those things, then how well are you going to be performing at the end of the day? That's always something that comes to mind for me. And so this is not really a very simple exercise. You really need to sit down and go through your priorities and your wants and your needs. If this is the first time you've heard me talk about the 2 types of priority lists, then I'm going to pop an episode in the show notes below where I do a deep dive into how to actually work out your priorities and manage your balance based off what your goals are. But essentially, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, that is a really important task for you to undergo, because once you have that clarity, it almost gives you a direction, right? So if you were shooting a bow and arrow, or if you were, going on a quest, let's just say, and you had your destination, and then, there were challenges and hurdles and mountains and all that stuff along the way. At least you know where you're going, right? You deal with the things as they come up, but at least you know where you're going. It's the same kind of thing. If you're in pursuit of that money or of that career growth, all the little fallout bits along the way, yes, they might suck. Yes, you might have to be less social. Yes, you might not be able to exercise as much as you would like, although you can still train a little bit, all these little bits and pieces you can cope with because you know where you're going. But if you don't know where you're going and you don't know your why, you don't know why you're kind of pursuing all this money or pursuing this career, and it almost just feels like you're on a bit of autopilot, then you're really going to feel sensitive to all these things that you're compromising along the way, and because everything's just going to feel out of whack for you. It's going to feel like you are not in control of your life, basically. So I really urge you guys to, even if you have already listened to it, definitely check it out. The show is called How to Make More Time for the Things You Love. And it really takes you through this breakdown on understanding the different levels of priorities and helps you kind of categorize them. So you could also consider this in the context of your job. A side note from me here, I think this is a very, very toxic perspective that a lot of us have, especially in corporate. It's this idea that as a junior, you just have to kind of go through the motions. You have to slave away. You have to be that person that's working till 1, 2 a.m., especially in law. It's really bad for this. That's just, quote, the way it is. I'm telling you now, I'm a 5-year lawyer and I have never worked in a place like that because I've chosen not to accept that as a reality. I don't think that I need to work in a place like that and go through it and burn myself out and just do what all the juniors have done, years and years before me, to work my way up through the ranks because it's just the way it is. For me, it's a mismatch, and that's just not a place I want to work at. And I've found law firms who give me flexibility, who they themselves are role models of lifestyles I want. If you're working in a place, and this was an epiphany for me, if you're working in a place where your senior, your boss, the person right at the top, you don't want their lifestyle, then what are you working towards? If there's lateral, opportunities in the business and going one way up, following that career ladder is not the only path, then great. I'm sure you kind of know what you're doing. But if you really look at the opportunities in front of you, the people that are in the roles and the shoes that you want to step into as you grow, and it's not lifestyles you want to live, they're working late hours, they've got no time for their family, then what are you doing? Honestly, what are you doing? Because it's probably a role you've just fallen into without much consideration of that long term. And I promise you, falling into this mentality of it's just the way it is, or I just have to do it now and I'll enjoy it later, I just think you're robbing yourself of time you've got on this planet now. And it's not worth it. And I guarantee you there are other opportunities out there if you just start to broaden your horizons. If you step away from having to work at, the most notable firms. At the end of the day, your lifestyle is more important than what firm you've worked at, what company you've worked at. We put so much importance on that. And I think it's such an ego-driven thing. But I know because you're listening to this podcast, you genuinely care about your life and your health. And weighing all of these things up in the context of your future lifestyle, your lifestyle right now, is really important to make sure that the direction that you're going in is the direction you want to go in. So when you cross those hurdles and challenges, when you have to continuously cancel on your friends, it makes sense in your head because your balance needs that from you because you know where you're going. And so kind of prioritizing and creating a bit of a hierarchy in your mind where you go, okay, I know I'm compromising on these things. I know these things don't make me happy, but this is what I'm working towards and this is my why. And I can accept this situation and this makes sense for me and my balance and my goals. If you can't get to that place, then maybe what you're chasing is just not aligned for you. And this whole, conversation of what's making you unhappy at work has kind of even maybe reinvigorized like a whole new idea you've had that maybe you're doing something that isn't the right fit for you. And that's a really scary thought. And I've been there too before. But just know that once you start being okay with that, being okay with the fact that there's another way, there's another, company you could work for, there's another role you could do, there's another career you could entertain, things start to open up. When you're not so closed off, when you're open, when you're relaxed, when you're receptive, things open up. But I think just having a think about these things that we've spoken about today is really important to understand or assess, I guess, your happiness level with what you're doing for work. As I said, it's such a big part of our week, of our time. If it is sucking the life out of you and ruining your experience in every other area of your life, I put the question to you, is it worth it? So that's it from me today, guys. A little bit of a brain dump on happiness at work. I think it's something that comes up a lot with people I meet here. They're in, I think a lot of people in Dubai have moved here, especially in the corporate world, to earn more money, right? But at the same time, they're compromising on a lot of things. But for them, they know what that extra money means for them. And so they're happy to do like a 2-year stint where they just put their heads down and go. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're very clear and they're very driven and they're very aware of what that means for their lifestyle. But that is something they're prepared to compromise on. They're prepared to compromise on their happiness or overall lifestyle in pursuit of this thing for the short term. And so, like I said, there's no right or wrong. You need to just get to a place where you can own it, where you don't feel guilty, where you don't feel like shit because you're not doing the things you want. Because if you're in that place and then forcing yourself to chase something, it's going to be very hard to keep up with that chase, with that direction, when it just feels like it's throwing everything out of whack. So get yourself in alignment, have a think about these things, and just know you can feel happy and fulfilled and find a role that just works for your lifestyle. Now, this is something I've recently kind of shifted and changed in my life. And if this conversation has brought stuff up for you and you're feeling really kind of scattered and you're just not sure what to do next, please reach out to me on Instagram. I'd love to be a soundboard for you, even to just throw around some ideas. I mean, I'd love to share with you guys one-on-one how I found what I think is like an amazing opportunity that recruiters point blank told me in my face I would never get. Maybe that's something I can detail in another episode as well. Use the Q&A function, guys. So if you're listening on Spotify, there's a little question box. I'll try and put it at the end of most episodes. Sometimes it'll be a poll, but use that to ask me stuff as well. Drop comments on what you thought on the episode, or if you kind of want me to veer off into more conversation or topics about anything raised in the episode. But of course, the easiest way is just to reach out to us on Instagram. The handle is The Balance Theory Podcast, and I've popped links in the show notes below. We're also on TikTok and YouTube, so you'll find it all there. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I hope this has helped you if you're feeling unhappy in work, and of course, if you know somebody who's feeling quite similarly and you found this episode useful, then share it with them too. I'll see you all on Monday for another guest episode, and until then, stay balanced.